All right, welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Joe.
And today we have with us special guest Eric Haddad from 3DAeroventures. Say hi, Eric.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're
Thanks
welcome.
for being here.
Eric has, we brought him on board because he does he designs 3D printed RC models. He's an RC model maker of 3D printing stuff. And he's got a whole line of planes that are really, they're honestly not your typical planes. You have one that's, I'll call it a more traditional plane that people might go for, but it's got so much detail that it is not a typical plane. You did an amazing job with the details on it.
Thanks.
We'll get into some of that. I think, what is it, the B-17?
Yeah, B-17. It's a 1/16th scale, so it's pretty good size.
Yeah, and that's got all the things.
I'm just looking at the tires on that thing.
Yeah, the tires are cool. I went and I took pictures. There's a full-scale B-17 in Tucson, not too far from me, at the Pima Air Museum.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I took a lot of good scale pictures there for that one. So,
yeah,
I picked little things to be real picky on.
Nice. I hope we can get into what those things are, because that's always a curious thing. Like, while you're doing a design, which things am I going to hold as truth? Which things am I going to goof around with, like, to make the design look better? Yeah. So cool. All right. So anyway, that's what he's been on. He is. Are you an owner?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a side business. I'm the sole proprietor.
Sole proprietor of 3DAeroventures.
That's right.
And you could go to www.3DAeroventure.com, I believe. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
That is correct. Yeah, and then
awesome.
youtube.com/3DAeroventures.
Awesome. We'll have links down below so you can check it out. And if you're listening live, we also post those links in the little side chat channel, so you can take a look while we're talking. In the meantime, but we wanted to thank you for coming on. And as we always do, we kind of start our show. We give some thanks. We talk about our community. We talk about our journey. Basically, because that's half of what this show is about, is talking about what we've been doing in the hobby and kind of help people who started in the hobby. Might be frustrated. I know I had been at many points in my hobby career.
Oh yeah,
we're like, sure. I'm done. Forget it. That was. We'll talk about that this weekend. How it was this weekend. But listening to people talk about what they're getting into and some of the ridiculous fun they might be having kind of always helped bring me back. So we always make sure that that's part of our discussions here today. So why don't we start giving thanks to our patrons for for those people who felt that what we do here is worthwhile. They go over to patreon.com at Aviation RC Noob, and they help us out by making a pledge to donate every month. We appreciate that. As well as even if you just listening and spread the word. We appreciate your help and appreciate your patronage and your listenages. I don't even know how to say it.
I like that word.
Yeah, listenages. I made it up.
We appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, big time. And honestly, in the community that we have over on Discord, we'll put a link to our Discord channel. Eric, you've had probably about a week of watching the nonsense that our community gets into. It's especially excitable as Flight Fest is coming up, and a lot of people are trying to finish their projects before they go, so they have some things to fly. Are you familiar?
It's cool to see all the activity going on. I mean, just in your couple little chats, and then there's some good 3D printing discussions going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll definitely be sticking around even for years after this interview, just to chime in. Yeah, exactly. You got me.
No, it's good. And that's part of what we love about what we started here is the community, and it just they're active and they're excited to build. I built it around when we started this. I used this Discord when we started. I was kind of checking it out, but I was doing this contest on Flight Test called Build Your Way, which is build 4 planes in a month, get them up and flying. Good luck. So I'm like, we're all going to be building like crazy. Why don't we just hop on this bid channel here in this group? And I'm like, we'll just chat, because I'm almost guarantee you we're going to be building every weekend, And so a bunch of us did. It was pretty cool. So
that's really
we decided it was something to keep going. So
makes it easier to be building with other people and you're just chatting the whole time. Kind of makes it go by faster. Huh?
Yep. Okay. So with that, why don't we talk about our journey so far? What have we been up to in the last couple of weeks of the hobby? Eric, do you want to start? Tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, I got a couple of things I've been working on. I haven't been doing a ton of flying the last few weeks. It's starting to get hot here. Okay. My latest project I just published that I did a YouTube video for a company called DBT Aero. Mm-hmm. And so I had to build not necessarily a crate, but a shipping box to get that to them. And I didn't ship it through the mail. I hand delivered it in Phoenix to the guy, but I bought all this foam, super soft foam with the little cubes cut out so you can make pockets.
Yeah.
I had to get a ton of them, stack them together. The plane's, 18 inches tall. The fuselage is that round. Wow. So yeah, it took some time. It's a pretty good sized box to little pockets for it so he could travel with it safely because he wants to take it around, or the company wants to take it to Oshkosh this year and display it. Mm-hmm. A couple different air shows and stuff. So
I wish I were going to Oshkosh so I could see both your model and the full size version. I'm assuming they're bringing it too.
I don't know if they're going to have it, the full size one there.
Okay.
But we can get into the specifics of that project later on.
Yeah, we will. So so you've been working on that, on the crate.
So I work on the crate, and then I had kind of put pause on a new project for the last week or so, but I've been working on an ultimate biplane 3D printable version of that. It'd be a 50, 55-inch wingspan. Not too big, not too small, but
it's a good large park flyer size.
Yeah, so I've got there's printed parts behind me from that on the printers, and I know people listening can't see that, but I've got mostly the fuselage and tail done and working on the wings. So yeah, mostly been building and not so much flying the last couple weeks.
Well, that's okay. So how has it been? Mostly just getting into the design programs and and we'll get into the design process. Are you basically taking a shell and kind of refining it so you can get all the parts and pieces in it?
Yeah.
In that outer shell?
I typically work from the tail forward because, I'll start with just 2D sketches and turn those into 3D parts in CAD. And so I can complete, and then there's a lot of detail that goes internally to get some ribbing structures and that sort of thing, and areas for carbon fiber tubes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'll get all those fine details done from the tail forward, so I can start printing the tail pieces while I'm moving forward on the fuselage.
Is that more an inspirational kind of thing? Like that helps you get excited about the rest of it?
Yeah, for sure. Once the physical parts start coming out, you're like, all right, it keeps you going. And it breaks up the monotony of just like sitting at the computer designing the whole time.
Nice.
So definitely, because you have to print the parts in chunks, right? So like I can't get to a full plane until I finish designing the next chunk. So once you see it like slowly puzzling together, it's pretty motivating.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, that's what I've been working on the last couple of weeks.
Very cool. Nice. Well, that sounds like it's pretty busy. I imagine those are quite involved. Which part of you enjoyed more, building the biplane or figuring out the crate?
Crate was cool because there's something different. It's be relaxing just pulling out little foam cubes. I have a crap load of just random foam bits lying around in our garage, so
nice.
We'll figure out what to do with that. I could just make a little pit for my kids to jump in or something.
That's what I was going to
say. Your garage is a foam pit for a man.
I might have to charge people to come use it.
Yeah, my kids will come by. All right. Well, I guess that brings us to you, Joe. I know you've been busy.
I've been building like a madman, and have been enjoying it. So, leading up to Flight Fest, which this episode will, I think, come out the Saturday of. So, for anybody who's out there, hey, but so the last weekend, I went up to your place. That's when we were sitting down on your back porch. So that's the episode that went up just this past Saturday, a couple days ago. We had a good time building and doing all that. And then I came home and my wife was extremely patient and understanding. in that I wanted to get as much done on the front end before Flight Fest and not be in the last minute cram. So came home, immediately dove in and was in the build channels every night pretty much, and knocked out the skinned Spitfire, the second one from last Flight Fest.
Yeah.
So you had printed out the 2 sets of skins and only made one. So that's the second one that's been sitting there forever, skinned, waiting. Finally got it built.
Well, so what? Now that you've finished it, how do you feel about it?
The horizontal stab is still curved. It's still warped. I couldn't get it all out. So I'm curious to see how that goes down.
All right.
Hopefully this one won't die in combat quite in the same manner, because my one last year just kind of got winged. I took a prop strike right at the hinge of the elevator.
Oh no!
It just kind of caught the corner of it, and it was fine, but it just started flying worse and worse and worse. I couldn't figure it out because that tear was tearing more and more and more across the back end.
Just a slow death.
Yeah, it was, until I was like, man, this thing is flying like trash. And my spotter kayaks was like, I think your plane's been damaged. I can see light shining through the elevator. I was like, that explains a lot. Yeah. So I've built the Spitfire. I got the Noob Wonder that Sam sent us, and the decals put on that Tony sent us. Nice. And so that's nice and pretty and beautiful. And how'd
they turn out? Because I haven't received mine. I'm the last one out the door, I think, in his list.
Well, we know where you stand.
That's okay. That's all right.
No,
I've already built 4 of them. I mean, wait, count the big ones. I got 6 of them now.
There you go.
I'm not too terribly worried. I'm not gonna be too upset. But I'm curious to see how the stickers matched up with the design we had, and how easy or painful they went together. How was that?
So the decals look great. I took a little liberty because I don't necessarily know what his intentions were for how they were going to sit on the wing and position and all that. Other than I centered it up as the halfway point between the center line and the wingtip. Okay. And made that my center point, measured out to either side the half width of the thing, so I had my guide marks. Okay. And then actually measured front to back, so I guess cord length, but halved that. And that's where I put the tips of the diamonds that's wrapping the podcast sticker. Yeah. So that is center of the wing. Okay. And then I think it wrapped over the front of the wing and went to the underside a little bit, and then I snipped off the trailing excess off the tail. Cool. And then now and I was talking to him in Discord about it. So the decals that go on the wing plates and the tail fins are ever so slightly undersized. And I asked him about it, so I'm not complaining. I'm curious, like, was there a missize in the speed kit, or was this an intentional thing? And he said it was an intentional thing, so that if people had wiggle room, if they didn't get it aligned right, but also they could stick it straight to foam and just cut those parts out if they wanted, and they weren't going to wind up oversized or anything. And so for me, I stuck them on and then just trimmed the foam down, the excess amount of foam, so it didn't show, and it's not going to impact, the surface area of those enough to matter. And they look great. Tony and I talked a bit about, the decal cutting he's done in the past and his method of sticking, because it's like the tail feathers is that blue background vinyl, but then he's got the white feather highlights on it. Oh yeah. I'm like, how did you by hand stick each one of those for how many decal kits you sent out? Okay, so it's a blue field and he stuck white feather highlights in, and so it's not a cutout. It's on top of. Right. So it's blue, it's the background field, and then he laid more. Same thing with your lettering.
Okay.
It's
Wow.
the background vinyl, and then the lettering and your numerics are on top of that.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about how he did that. So that was kind of cool to learn about. So Spitfire, Wonder. Guys in the Discord would have seen it, but I did up a logo for myself, which that was an interesting process.
That was part of what I wanted to make sure you had for our big planes.
Right.
Make sure that you had a logo under the plane.
And I stink at artistic things, so I'm pleased that it was as easy as it was.
It turned out really good.
Yeah. So got those printed out, and they're under each of the wings of the noob. And then, we'll get big versions to go under the big noob.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finished that Flurkin. That
Nice.
Flurkin that's been sitting around for a year.
Oh, how would you characterize that build? Because that is a very different kind of construction.
It, I think the verbiage I used on it was that it was Master Series Light.
Okay.
So it doesn't have all the curling of the foam, but you're getting the nice, fun shapes through geometric cuts.
And there's definitely some complexity to the build.
Yes. Not too much that is,
No.
Beyond tackling, but I've not built a plane that had that much going on, outside of a Master Series. So, it was enjoyable. It was definitely taking the time, being slow, being methodical as you were gluing like the nose piece. Now, Eric, have you seen the Flurkin?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Did you buy the kit or did you just cut out the pieces yourself?
So the kit was given to me by a buddy of ours that went with us last year, but he had to catch a flight back home, and he had already opened it and started, and so he's like, I can't really take this on the plane with me.
That's
so
cool. It's a real angular fuselage construction.
Yeah,
it is, and so it was,
it's really good too.
Get the pieces started and get all your bevel cuts made, and then it's basically just section by section, throwing some glue down, closing it all the way up to its final thing, and then open it up to where it'll open, do some more glue, and close it all the way up, and you're just walking it in.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out really well. There was a bit of glue from the back half of the nose shell, I guess, that got glued to the lengthwise supports, longerons, I think Brian had called them a few episodes ago. And I don't know, because I can't remember where Jesse left off and where I picked up, but either he had some glue get loose or I had some glue get loose. Either way, it was a booger to get that glue to let go. And it never really did. I had to take my hobby knife and stick it through the shell and just do swiping cut motions to try to cut loose whatever it was connected to. And that was just a process trying to figure out where it was hung up. But I got that patched over, and I mean, if you look, you'll see it, but if you're just glancing by, you won't notice it.
Yeah.
Still some work to do on those. I got to put the power system in the Flurkin, the Spitfire, and the Noob Wonder. Spitfire needs power system, and then the Spitfire and the Wonder need control horns mounted and push rods installed. But all the servos are put in.
Nice. So you're closing in at the very end of all those things.
Yeah, so I've been taking the past couple nights off so I can spend time with my wife or not be 100% on that. Like I said, she was very patient and understanding, and so I wanted to make sure that I got as much done as possible quickly, and then as I have some spare time, I can tinker with it. But I'm not in that last 2 days before Flight Fest trying to cram out 4 planes.
Come on, that's where the fun is. Just kidding.
That's where your fun is.
No, it is not. It is not nearly.
Speaking of your fun, tell us about this giant.
So in 10 days, we took the patterns, made a second giant noob. Did a lot of cutting, got the basic spar and box shapes, which I then basically did the skeleton around that and built up the fuse and built out the wings. And I was smart, but didn't take good enough notes or didn't bother to look back at my notes from the first build that went really well. Because I was folding over the second part of the skin, one of the wings. I used all hot glue, and problem with hot glue is you have a very short time window. And I probably would have been better using foaming glue, like a Gorilla Glue, or using maybe even wood glue would probably have worked pretty well.
Aliphatic resin.
Aliphatic resin. It rolls off the tongue like magic. And it sticks even better. That's what Tom always says. Anyway, he doesn't say anything about the magic part. All right,
so this is news to me.
Yeah, that part's news. But he does love talking about aliphatic resin. All right, so but I didn't do that. So I went with hot glue because I wanted to kind of power through getting that project done. I was hoping to get it done in the week. And consequently, I hit a snag halfway through kind of rolling it over. And it's tough to roll it at the same angle. So as it comes over, if one side gets on a little bit crooked, by the time you roll to the other side, now you've got it's small, 3/8 inch, but you're also resting it on a 3/16 inch wide piece of material. So one side's not resting on the material, and the other side is overhanging, right? When it should have been just straight. And if you had material that was still setting, you could shift it. You can make the adjustments and line it up properly, and then put all your stuff on it, let it hang out until it's done. But hot glue it solidifies real quick, especially in a somewhat cold house. Air conditioning's on, and
especially when you're running as much glue as you run. So
we're
front
looking
end of that glue run will stay hot for a while.
You're looking at a 2-foot by 5-foot wing, right? So that's the panel that I'm trying to put glue, and I'm running it at literally as I'm pumping out the glue, the heat gun is cooling off. It can't pump it out at the same rate as I go. So I'm starting to lose time because I can't pump out enough glue. And by the time I get to the end of that, now the first stuff is starting to cool and set. And if I don't do the roll quickly and set it properly, it comes out to issues. Last time, if I remember right, I had an extra hand. If I recall, I think Amy was there when I did the roll. And so she had one side, I had the other, and the roll was glue, 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 and go. And it was easier to maneuver because we had one of us on each side. This time I did it by myself, and it was not as smooth. So then I heat glued.
It didn't sound as smooth.
Well, I mean, it was just off enough where I had to try to undo it. And I knew undoing it would be a problem. So I used a heat gun. And as I used the heat gun, I started to melt the glue and the foam and the paper, and burn the paper, and all sorts of other things trying to fix it. So I decided to just cut a whole section off and put a new panel on. Just glued that down, called it done, and trimmed it up. So that would have been a far better solution if I had thought of that as it was happening. I would have said, oh, well, I'll just do it this other way. And while it would stink, it's better than getting that upset. There's that. And then there was another thing with the fuse. I'm trying to remember what was going on, where something didn't set quite right. And it was a booger trying to get it straight. It
was the boards for the carbon fiber to go through.
Oh, yeah. So I remember now what I did. So now that we've got everything going and half my tables are half filled with junk, I can't put the plane together on a level surface without clearing off the whole table, right? And there's no real good place for that. I basically was going to set it up on the floor. So last time I put the wings on the spar with the plywood joiners, and I put it on the fuselage, and I pulled it in, and then I would rotate it down and mark it out and cut as I went until it was all the way seated, rotated down in and seated.
Okay.
And then I pulled them up, I glued the snout out of them, and I rolled them back down into the fuse, pressed against the side of the inner box. And then all that glue on all the different surfaces ended up creating a very solid connection to the inner box of the fuse. There's like there's a double box, right? An inner box, a trussing material in between, sandwiched in between that and the outer box. So there's multiple sets in there. I forgot about that. So I tried to just set it in and get it good and had it level and all the stuff, and it set too low. So I had to trim out the things in the under the wing, so that when they pressed on, they'd actually press across the sidewalls of the fuse instead of hitting up against them, which isn't terribly bad, except now the back half is set lower. I had to recut all the back half, and then all the joiners in between that were allowing me to put the horizontal stabilizer on. Those then had to be all done, removed and put down, and like the whole thing. I was like, oh, I forgot this, and that. I was just like, it was one of those, when you're at the end of the tunnel, and all of a sudden somebody moves the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
it's a little disheartening. So I was like, I gotta go. I'm gonna do something else. So I lost a whole day of just sort of rolling my head around what I had to do and how it's going to come back to it with a kind of positive way to get to it and get through it. And, I ultimately did it. It wasn't as terrible, but it was some work. It was some finagling. I did get it. And as I was kind of resetting it, I realized what I had done the first time and wish I had done it properly the second time. But that's okay. I can definitely make some notes in the build log on the flight test forums. So that way, if anybody else wants to build them, I'm going to release the things I had that I had used for plans, so that if somebody really wants to go to it, they're welcome to go build a 3 times the size New Wonder.
Cool.
And so another way to kind of mentally noodle and get away from that project here and there, I had the Hulk Wonder was ready. So one of the times I went out to the park, I brought it and I gave it a quick run around the park, and that flew really well. I built the 4th Wonder, which went super quick because I was trying to help my girlfriend with her build.
Right.
As well as trying to get that one done. So I built another one, and I also started cutting out an DBT Aero. It's basically a little flying wing, and it's got the Thunderbird livery, which is really cool looking. It's really striking in the sky. So I was like, all right, I'm going to build another one of these to bring to Flight Fest, or just to have. So nice. I did that. So that's the other thing that's on my list is I do want to get to the project that Eric is building or has built for DBT Aero. I have my own version of that made out of foam board, kind of a Master Series version, where the foam, the Velvetry foam board is rolled and curved, and it looks kind of, it looks honestly similar to Eric's, although his is obviously perfect. And mine is made out of jointed foam board. But I got to the point where I had to roll over the wing sections and start framing out the box tail part, the side panels and the upper control surfaces.
I imagine that'll be the most complicated part.
It will, and it is, and that's why I was like, I have to think about this and make sure I have it correct. I want to have it right, so I do it once. I don't want to have to do it once and then have to tear it apart and then rebuild it. So I have it mostly framed out, so it was time to I was procrastinating, and I think it's time to be done procrastinating and just put it together. Because the little one that's already out there on the flight test forums, done by JPOT1, it flies great. I mean, I really enjoy flying it. It's relaxing.
Yeah, another smooth. It's a smooth flying design for sure.
Yeah, good tendencies. And then so we can talk about that. Joe, do you want to talk about some of the things that have been going on with the community in the last little bit, or do we want to move forward talking to Eric here?
I can just briefly. I don't know what's going on with this foamy profile, so I'll leave you to talk about that. I know Muttley. So a lot of people are building, trying to finalize leading up to Flight Fest. So there's wonders being finished up, and there's a myriad of things going on. Muttley is been finishing up some missiles that he's planning on taking. This guy builds missiles to fly. I guess he does like high alpha kind of setups with them.
He does like a prop somewhere in the middle or on each of the fins in the middle, and he just flies it around. It looks great.
Yeah, it works surprisingly well. And we also have tossed around the idea the other night about seeing if he could build a smaller missile that would go under one of the Noob Wonders, or multiple that would go under these giant Noob Wonders, and then when we're flying them in one of the combats, he or somebody else could be flying the missile. Probably him, because he knows how to fly them. and do a launch assist where we would fly the missile up and then do a release.
Yeah.
So he could fly the missile in combat.
So many good ideas.
That's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that will actually come to fruition, but I'll be bringing a couple extra 9-gram servos in case.
Yeah, right.
And then I'll scroll down to the bottom. So Bushhawk RC has something going on with 3D printing. I don't know what it is he's printing. Do you know what that is?
It looks like a Horton.
Yeah.
What is that?
World War II, or like after World War II German.
Yeah.
Wing.
I'm gonna post it in the thing here, so that Eric can see it easy.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures.
Okay.
Yeah, because go ahead, Eric.
I can't remember. It's a Horton 229.
That's it. Yep.
It's
Horton HO229 is a flying wing. It's a turbine, has 2 turbines. I think it's I don't even know if they ever built it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they did, but it was one of those. This concept is working. Let's scale it up. But he's
a ton of concepts in World War II. Horton and a bunch of different. Fokker had a bunch of like they just knocked out a ton of concepts that they never built.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think this might be one.
So he's 3D printing one. So it looks like he's coming along with it. Some of the other stuff is people are starting to experiment with hot wire cutters. And that's kind of what he built a quick profiler, but he was saying that basically he cuts out the shapes.
Speaking about Speeder Bike Dave.
Speeder Bike Dave is one, and he basically uses his needle cut. And so he'll take the plane form of the wing, and he'll have it needle cut the foam board. And then he'll put aluminum taper on the edges, and he'll follow that with the hot wire cutter. And he'll cut out full-size wings out of like XPS foam, which is expanded polystyrene. That's a blue or green or pink foam that you find in hobby big box stores. And and you don't even have to get that crazy. I mean, he put together a profiler widgeon. The simple widgeon, or the widgeon is the plane that Flight Test released a while back. It was like the water plane. So he's just making a version of it. It's just the kind of variety that people are kind of getting up into. It seems like there's a lot of people expanding their I'll call it the foam board horizon, and trying to work into different ways of getting the same kind of thing, which is getting some really interesting and unusual planes up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to see. Speaking of really cool, interesting planes in the air, let's see if we can.
Oh, that was a segue.
It was a really great segue to talk to Eric a little bit further about his company, 3DAeroventures, as well as talk about, what you've been working at, where the inspirations came from, and why you chose the planes you did to design, the 3D printing stuff. So why don't we start with kind of where you got into the hobby? How old were you? Where was it? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And how did it grow into what you're at now?
Sure. So yeah, I can give you a kind of a good background. I've always been into airplanes. I mean, ever since I was a baby. And so, growing up as a kid, my dad was real supportive of me and my brothers and our different hobbies. I was the only one into airplane stuff, but kind of dove into it with me. Just started with like those little Cox control line airplanes.
Oh, wow.
And just flying those in the front yard. And then they eventually came out with a Lazy Bee. I don't know if you've ever seen it. The wing looks like a surfboard with dihedral wingtips. And
yeah, that's a good way to call. That's a good way to put it. It does look like a big surfboard.
Yeah. So that was my first RC airplane. Maybe I was like 8 or 9, and actually managed to get a couple. Like, looked like I knew what I was doing, flying it in the air. This was without any, official lessons or training or anything. Then when I was 12, I asked for I want a legit RC airplane. So we went, we figured out where the RC hobby shop was and went to actually did it the right way with the flying field. And 12 years old is when I really got into legitimate RC flight. And then basically till I left for college, at 18, my dad and I would go almost every weekend. So he was real, and then it just got bigger. But he was really into building. He's a pretty good builder, and he flew a little bit, but that he didn't enjoy it as much. So kind of had the best gig as a budding RC pilot, as my dad would build them and build them well, and then I would fly them. So we started getting into that's when 3D aerobatics started getting really popular, or even it was still fairly new, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and so we started getting into the bigger gas engine stuff and 40% aerobats.
Did you ever go towards giant scale, or did it
40% scale. I still have the 40% scale edge that he built. I still have that. So that thing's, man, that thing's 20 something years old now.
I was saying that also takes up a whole garage, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's big. It's 120 inch wingspan. Then a buddy of mine actually gave me a 50% scale laser 200. I don't know if you know what that one looks like. Really cool aerobat. I've gotten into the real big gas stuff in the past.
Is that the one that I would call a forehead wing?
It's a mid wing. The laser?
Well, yeah, no. There's some 3D aerobatic planes that have a second wing. That's it's almost like a little delta that sits right above the cockpit.
Oh yeah. Those they use it for pattern planes as well. Doing pattern.
Yeah, that's the one.
IMAC competitions and stuff. Yeah, the laser 200 is a cool design. So still fly those.
Nice.
But I'm got more into electric flight in college. Just the technology was getting a lot better, and battery technology was getting better. So I mostly fly electrics now, but I'll take the big gas route every now and then.
Right.
So.
Very cool.
So from there, my college background is in engineering. Worked as a product development engineer, actually for a jewelry company in Texas. You wouldn't think they'd be that technical, but they're a larger manufacturer. They have their own 50 retail stores spread throughout the United States. I mean, by now they probably have 60 or 70, but and then they did everything in house, even they're very design centric company. So even the wood furniture for their retail stores, they had their own wood shop. They would make it there.
Oh, wow.
Okay, wow.
Everything was done in house. They tried not to outsource. Even their raw materials, they had a raw materials department. They'd make their own sterling silver and gold sheet and wire and casting grain and everything.
Wow. There's a control freak at the center of that company.
Yeah. Or they just actually it was a money saving thing too.
Yeah.
The more they can control, the more they save money. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure there's a lot of good reasons for it. Yeah. Honestly, it's just if a quick glance, it's they wanted to be in charge of everything. I don't know. It has to be our way, which is fun.
It was it was frustrating at times too, for sure.
Yeah, I bet.
But the department I was in was product development. So I was in a really cool position where I got to see different parts of the company and get to work on projects in different areas. And working at as an engineer at a jewelry company really taught me how to have an eye for detail and how to blend art and engineering to make a product. So, because basically a concept designer would hand me a design and say, okay, here, figure out how to make 10,000 look exactly like this. and it's an ornate piece of jewelry, right?
Right.
So I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then started my own company, just doing product development work for individuals, inventors, small businesses to help develop their product ideas.
Oh wow, cool.
So that's where both of those jobs is where all the CAD skills and understanding manufacturability and 3D designing for 3D printing and stuff like that came in.
Right. Yeah, and kind of being able to take a shape and dissect it in ways to go, okay, this is how it has to be printed, this is how it has to come together.
Exactly.
This is the things we need to put into it to make sure it will come together simply. Mm-hmm. Or at least
so it's a cool experience to learn I could take a piece of plastic, whatever product off the shelf and understand, like, oh, I know how to reverse engineer this, and I could duplicate it in manufacturing, or at least like know what processes to do it through.
That's really cool.
So yeah, I got into 3D printing real heavy when I was running my own product development business, because we do prototyping, either functional prototyping or just visual. So I started just kind of slowly adding more and more printers and different types of printers. And then towards the end of me running that company is when I started developing a relationship with SolidWorks, the company that makes the CAD software that I use.
Yeah. For a long while, they were, if you were part of the Experimental Airplane Club, as it were, you would, if you're in that membership, you would get a free copy of SolidWorks. And I think now it's a limited edition, you can only do so many things with it, but I mean, it's pretty.
Yeah, I think
unless
it's still
you're building
pretty
multiple
capable
planes at the same time, you're still pretty much full capability.
Yeah, I think it's definitely capable enough to do like a full aircraft design.
Yeah. I think it's not free anymore, and it's not unlimited, I think, is the difference. And everybody, there was a big hullabaloo about that for a minute, but that's the one to go to,
Yeah, they used to give away basically a standalone seat to EAA members that you could just load on your computer. They've gotten more to like an online model where you have to be connected to the internet.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's good and bad. They're trying to compete with another company. Autodesk makes a software called Fusion 360 that's really popular with hobbyists, newcomers to CAD. And so that's where SolidWorks is trying to compete with them now to kind of take a little more of that hobbyist and maker market share.
There's a professional version of that too.
Exactly. Yeah, they still have the $10,000 a seat, like standalone on your computer. Now they also have a hobbyist version that's like $10 a month. Yeah,
the Fusion is inexpensive, relatively speaking. So you're not going to have to buy half a car every year.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the same. Okay. I actually use it because I was helping them promote it when they came out with it. Well, that's all I use now, and it's just as capable as the standalone seat.
They all seem to have pretty similar functionality. Yeah. And that if you have an idea and you know how to navigate the program, you can get it to work. You'll get what you want out of it at the end. It just may not be as smooth, maybe, or as.
Yeah, I mean, there's headaches anytime you have to have an internet connection just to use the software.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some drawbacks.
So what got you heading towards 3D printed planes?
Yeah. Right? So
how did that journey start?
So my relationship with SolidWorks initially was they just paid me to make tutorial videos for their YouTube channel. So I would hand them the video, and they owned everything. And then, so they have a really cool department there, just called user advocacy. It's like a whole department. They have a whole set of employees, and the head of that was in charge of finding a few content creators, what they called them initially, to just develop content for them for YouTube and Instagram and stuff. And so we kind of tested it out. We were just sort of guinea pigs. And they chose me basically because I reached out to them to see, hey, do you guys want any like blog content or anything? You guys looking for anything? And it was just good timing. They said, actually, we need some creators to develop some YouTube videos for us. So we started with that. About a year in, they said, okay, now we're trying to target more like the hobbyist maker market because of like what Fusion came out with. And so is there anything you're passionate about you could create your own YouTube channel, use our product to design stuff, and you own the content. We'll just pay you to, be a sponsor. We'll be your sponsor.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So a lot of YouTube channels don't start that way. Usually, like, you build a following and then you attract sponsors. So it was risky.
Right. It's like, we noticed you've got thousands of people listening to you every time you post. We'd love to have you tell them about us.
Yeah. So they were really cool to take that risk. Like, you have absolutely no followers, and we like the content you're creating for us. So, like, what's something you're passionate about that you could start a channel? And I said, well, I've always been into RC airplanes. 3D printing airplanes just kind of started becoming a thing. So, like, 3D lab print had already come out with a few designs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I knew it was possible. I just had to, like, I guess I'll just figure it out if they could do it.
Right. I remember your X100 kind of came. Is it X100 or It came out at almost the same time. I think that Spitfire kind of had been released. And everybody went, "Whoa, this is possible! Holy crap!"
Yeah, exactly. So they were definitely, like, they started that whole thing, and they're the big inspiration for now. There's hundreds of designers designing their own 3D printed planes. Yeah,
exactly. They kind of gave them the pathway to make success.
That's how the channel started, and then as I started developing more designs, I decided to start selling and make my own website.
Now, did you make a video and then gave it to them and they edited it? At least in the beginning, and then when it was, or did you edit the whole thing? And
I had to learn everything.
Here's a video.
They never. Every once in a while, they'd give a note with, like, actually just change our, like, marketing shout out to this line.
Oh wow!
They'd never edited anything.
Cool.
I said about, or, like, I would just pitch. I had to pitch basically like a 4-video package for a year.
Okay.
So they knew the subject matter, but
yeah. Okay.
It was nerve-wracking the first year. I mean, the first video was easy. I basically took just one of those giant foam gliders you get at Hobby Lobby and converted it to RC. It was like a project I did with my son.
Yeah, you had like a pod.
I 3D printed a little pod, like a motor pod. That was my first.
I know a bunch of people who did. It was like 3-4 years ago? Because I was at Flight Fest, and there was a lot of people. They talked about doing that hook glider thing, and there's a number of people who had that design.
Oh, really?
They had printed out, and they were
I made it. I just gave it away.
And they had them. That was so much fun. Yeah,
that's cool. So yeah, that was fun. And then I was like, well, next step is like, let's design a full 3D printable plane that's just a flying wing.
Mm-hmm.
So which it started out, that was my headline when I pitched it to him, was like, I'm just going to make a flying wing. And so that was a little, I had never designed a 3D printable plane that, I didn't know if it was going to work. Of course, I made it way more complicated than it needed to be. I was like, well, I've seen hundreds of flying wings. Let's make a totally different kind of design. Right. I had seen this concept before with connected wingtips on a forward wing and a back wing, which is that back wing basically acts like a horizontal stabilizer. But so that's when I came up with that, and I call it the infinity wing design.
Right. Yeah, and it was that's your X100, the infinity wing. Now, and that was the first thing I saw that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that looks incredible. And then I immediately thought, I think I can make it out of foam board, because that's what I do with every plane I see. I'm like, I might be able to design that out of foam board, and people have, but and it's a really unique looking plane. What were the difficulties in that design? I mean, it was obviously some of your earlier work in that, but what would you say you overdid? I know you made a V2.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us kind of what maybe the things you
story.
did, and then what did you shift to? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that it's a unique design. There haven't been a lot of flying models of that style of wing, I guess.
No.
So just my difficulty in I have enough aerodynamics knowledge, like, to be dangerous, I guess, and to build models. But designing this plane was I had no idea, like, where's the CG going to be? Is the back wing creating lift, or do I need it to be more like a horizontal stabilizer?
Right.
So I initially thought it would be like a flying wing. Both wings would be creating lift. So I had the CG way too far forward, and there's a funny part in the video where I almost kill myself hand launching it. So if you haven't watched the video, the video took off because it was me just going through iterations of the design and
right. Yeah, I really like
publishing all the failures, and so I think that's why it hit a nerve with some people. So they were like, "Oh, this is really, you're not just making it look all polished and actually showing that you like crashed the plane and almost into yourself." And so, yeah, the center of gravity was the big hurdle. Once I got that figured out, it flew awesome. And so because the video garnered, a decent amount of attention, there were a few people that contacted me about, hey, we think your design's infringing on a patent that I have. And so I'll get to DBT Aero in a minute, but the first person that approached me initially was very friendly.
Right.
More and more I talked to him, I knew he wanted basically us to work together to keep developing things around his patent. I had my patent lawyer. I knew a patent lawyer from my previous job doing product development for other inventors.
Mm-hmm.
Him review everything. He said, actually, I don't think your design infringes on his patent. I wasn't wild. And the guy, I told the guy that. He said, well, either work with me or we're going to have a problem. I said, well, I don't like starting business relationships that way, so I'll just tweak the design this way. I sent him the proposed tweak, and he said, yeah, that'll get around my patent. And I said, okay, I'll do that instead. So
is that what the V2 was about?
Yeah, that's why I had to he said, take it off your website until you redesign it. And so people were upset. I took it off the website without much notice, and then put a notice like, hey, this guy threatened to sue me if I don't tweak the design. So
I remember
it was a really simple tweak. The wingtips used to be perfect. The connection from the aft wing to the forewing was perfectly rounded.
Okay.
And now it's more. It has a fillet, but it's a straight winglet now. So it's it's slightly boxier. And that wasn't a major change.
Is that a airfoil shape, or is it symmetrical?
It's a symmetrical airfoil, yeah.
Okay.
The whole wing is symmetrical, or both. I call them wings. Both wings are symmetrical, yeah.
They are. They're wings. I remember there being a NASA paper about the idea of boxed wings and increasing efficiency. It's essentially where the idea of the rotated inward wingtips came from. Where they basically winglet. The winglets, and how they improved efficiency by reducing the vortices drag.
That's
as well as creating a positive yawing action a little bit, not really, but there's
the biggest thing is the drag.
Yeah,
you're trying. That's why
there's a whole NASA
all
paper
have
on all that.
Winglets. Yeah, those winglets do reduce the wingtip vortices. They're kind of that spinny, a little tornado that comes off the wingtips.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole point. Is what if the wing doesn't end?
Right.
And you're basically eliminating the wingtip vortices. So
exactly. Now, did you do that basically from that kind of paper? Had you read that paper?
I saw. So my first year at college, I went to Embry-Riddle University.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
There's one in Arizona. Yeah, I was doing aerospace engineering there, and
nice.
I was a freshman, but we got to go to senior students design presentations for their final project for the year.
Yeah.
And one of the projects, they had come up with just a rudimentary design of an airline or an airlifter, like a cargo plane.
Yeah.
With boxed wings like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which was very angular.
Yeah.
So I said it'd be cool to just do a perfectly rounded, in 3D CAD had developed enough where you could just do perfectly blended things. So that's where I came out with that kind of. But that was the inspiration. So I had seen the connected box wing design before, so I didn't just invent that. But
right, and I don't know that concept that they have was terribly new either.
Yeah, it's been around.
Oh, right, it was in the '60s. That paper come out where they were looking at the increasing aerodynamic efficiencies by doing exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Which is really
So-
cool. And then I was like, I wonder if they really did it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think it. I mean, there's some merit to the design, or to that concept of a box wing, but I think the manufacturing can be difficult. Brings up some manufacturing difficulties, but it kind of brings us to this company DBT Aero.
Yeah.
If you want to chat about that one.
Well, let me see. Let me just see. Let's talk about quickly your other designs, and then we'll go back to how that original X100, because obviously you went and did some other things, right? It seems like you put together a pretty straightforward, like if you've never flown before, and this is part of what I like, part of why what I wanted to highlight, because our channel is built towards, hey, if you're just starting out in this hobby, how do you get in? How do you get in for cheap? If you've got a 3D printer, the Micro Sport Cam is a great little way to start off and get going, because you have, it's essentially very similar to the Aero Scout,
just a
Horizon
little
Hobby Aero Scout.
airplane.
It's a little pusher airplane. It's small, it's lightweight. You can print it however many times you need until you learn how to fly it. It's pretty low part count, and it's pretty basic.
Yeah, it's a simple design.
Now, did you print that out of different things? Or did you use like a vinyl cover for the coloring?
Oh, it's all printed. There's anybody who's done 3D printing is probably, or at least for RC airplanes, is probably familiar with this material. It's like a foaming plastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a foaming PLA, so it prints super lightweight parts. So it's great for RC planes.
How much fiddling did you have to do to get it right
with that material?
Yeah, or was it kind of like, well, what they have in the package worked?
Yeah, I mean, it worked. I didn't do a ton of didn't go through a ton of failed parts to get the settings right to print that material. Okay. It's fairly friendly. I use one that's from a company called Color Fab.
Mm-hmm. I think they were the first ones to come up.
Yeah, they invented it basically. So, I did. So that if you print it out of that, it's sub 250 gram. 3D printed plane that flies pretty good.
Which means it's outside of the FAA regulations for remote ID.
Exactly. That was the hot topic when I designed that plane.
It still is the hot topic, right?
I know.
Oh my gosh. Anyway.
So yeah, that's a good one just to build and hang up on your shelf. It's an easy one to get started with 3D printing. So that was the biggest goal with that one, was to, if you've never 3D printed a plane before, here's a good little one to start with.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty little. It prints out pretty quick, as I can tell. I think I only got like a wing and a half done, and then I squirreled into some. Yeah. I think my printer needed some work on it, and I'm like, and then I moved on.
Yeah, and then I started getting into more complex designs. My favorite airplane as a kid was a wood kit built designed by Goldberg RC. They closed in the mid 2000s, but it's modeled after aerobatic plane called the Super Chipmunk.
Yes,
where a few people repurposed the de Havilland Chipmunk that was a trainer in World War II.
Okay,
and souped him up and made him like aerobats. So one guy made a living off of the plane. His name was Art Scholl.
Okay.
So he toured in the 70s and 80s and did air shows in a Super Chipmunk. I just think it's just got a lot of personality.
It's pretty cool. Now, that's not the one that you scaled up and scaled down, right? That's a separate project.
No, that one, I haven't published the files. That's called a Stinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You specifically designed a plane so that you could either decrease it by 30%-ish?
The base model is the base model is like a 60-inch wingspan. And then you could just scale the STL files like a certain percentage and get a little 40-inch wingspan model, or all the way up to an 80-inch wingspan, which is it's big.
Yeah, 80 inches is sizable.
Yeah. I've done a video about it, but I flew all three. Fly well,
watching that video today. It's pretty cool because. So, what would you say you learned about that process? Because obviously, at that point, you have your design process pretty set. I mean, a friend of mine said that you use basically a double wall for your design. Why did you choose double wall? A lot of the guys that are out there trying to put these things together choose one.
My design style is a little different. So it's not really a double wall. Basically, I design. So let's just take the wing, for example.
Right.
So when I design the wing in CAD, I hollow it out, but I leave the skin 2.4 millimeters thick.
Okay.
And then when you print that with a single wall, prints that skin hollow. With I put like a 5% honeycomb structure, so the 5% infill.
Yeah.
So what the skin ends up being is like corrugated plastic.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
So the skin, if you were to measure the skin, it's 2.4 millimeters thick with a pair of calipers. It's only one layer thick, and in between is honeycomb. So if you imagine just folding a corrugated plastic into an airfoil shape.
Oh, wow.
So the skin itself adds some rigidity to the airframe.
Right.
Instead of, like, most designs just have a single perimeter skin.
Right.
With a really complicated, like, zigzagging ribbing structure.
Yeah.
So
that's what I've seen.
Yeah, this is a real simple. I just have, maybe 3 horizontal ribs going along the length of the wing, and then the skin itself provides some structure. And of course, I use carbon fiber tubes through all the wings.
Okay. Now your hinges. Do I remember right? Do you use what do you use for the hinges?
They print in place, and then I use piano wire or a long, like 1 millimeter carbon rod all the way through, like the aileron.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So a lot of guys. I mean, a lot of designers use TPU hinges. You just print the hinges out of TPU and glue them in, just like a standard RC hinge. Those are really easy to use.
Yeah, they are.
So.
Yeah, but it's interesting because you went with a slightly different method. We have a friend
and that
of
was
ours.
Picked that up from 3D Lab Print. They do it that way.
Yeah. What do you say is the advantage over the other on the other way?
I guess just the potential for failure, like a hinge coming unglued or something. I don't really trust CA glue on TPU, but I don't think anybody's really had a problem. TPU isn't really great with adhesives, so
no, it isn't.
But the chances of carbon fiber breaking in a hinge it's not really ever going to happen.
No, it's not going to.
So,
cool.
That's kind of why I kept it that way, yeah.
Okay. If you haven't seen the Chipmunk, you did a great job giving it an amazing color scheme. Clearly, you take great pride in putting together your color schemes. How long does it take you to put together some of that stuff?
I can even tell you from the design standpoint to, like, let's just say the Chipmunk was probably 100 hours of CAD work. But then once you've got it all designed, the printing is probably on that one 150 to 200 hours of print time. There you go. There's the picture in the chat. And yeah, the assembly is actually pretty quick. Just the raw assembly you can do it in a couple days. Everything just keys together really well, lines together nicely.
Nice.
So.
Well, good.
And then everything has a build guide with, like, what hardware you need. So
yeah, and all this stuff, it looks like, is essentially available for free.
All my designs are free now. Yeah, even the more I could probably charge $60 to $80 for some of the more complicated ones, but
especially, and we'll get to this last one here, and then we'll go back to DBT Aero.
Yeah.
The B-17 Flying Fortress. It looks like it's one of your last ones.
Yeah.
This isn't just it printed out. It looks like a pretty cool plane. It'll fly well. No, this is like a scale replica model.
Yeah. It's that was a labor of love for sure.
so I mean, why the B-17? Why the detail? What was your aim, and how do you feel about that?
So as a kid, I always wanted a B-17. wasn't the most readily available. That's the beauty of 3D printing is like I can design whatever I want now, and even like designs that have never been, or scale designs that have never been done before as an RC model. The B-17's been done, but they were always like a complicated scratch build or, just sort of a simple foamy or something. I mean, nowadays you can get a pretty good one from Hobby King, but so that was the inspiration. I just always wanted a B-17 growing up.
Nice.
And then
Joe, are you taking a look at this?
I'm looking at the B-17 right now.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, you get all the panel lines. I mean, all the panel lines, painstakingly done.
I found some really good documentation on like where the main panel lines are. So I just kind of committed to, if I'm going to do it, I want to make a pretty nice looking scale one, including like the tire detail. Turrets had to be just right.
It's crazy, but when I first looked at the picture of the B-17, the tire was a thing that stuck out. I didn't realize those were. I guess you designed those tires for printing.
Yes.
I thought those were just hobby tires you picked up somewhere. Because I was like, those are some mean looking tires.
That material, the actual tire portion is printed as well, and that's a really unique material. It's actually kind of like the foaming PLA. They make a foaming TPU, so it's flexible. It's actually as light as a foam tire you'd buy from a hobby store.
Is that worth would you say it's worth the price of the TPU?
Yeah, it's called VariaSure.
Okay, I've seen it, and I've been tempted to buy it because one of the cool parts I like is when you go, okay, I'm going to grab this tire. Just having tires available and readily printed for your models, like all of a sudden grabbing landing gear is simple.
Right. I think it's worth it. I mean, just because your only tires aren't that big, that one reel will last you a long time.
Yeah.
Just printing tires, and I provide all the stuff's free. You can just I have the tire file in there for free, so you can print as many and it's easy to scale them up and down in the slicer software.
So on behalf of all the people who are curious and always wanted to try to get to like what does it take to get this thing, you've done an amazing job in helping anybody curious to get in and have success.
Yeah, that's
a really great job.
I mean, thanks. But I initially started charging for my designs.
Yeah.
And this is a side thing for me. Like I'm doing it anyway. I was doing it anyways for myself.
Yeah.
And I already had the website developed. Like, it's easy for me to put new stuff on there. And I was like, I don't have a full-time job. I don't really have the time to do full customer support and run this like a business, but I don't want people to not have access to the designs. So let's just make it free. Yeah, and it's a little selfish. The caveat is like I can't really give you customer service, but I do a pretty good job with the build guides to hopefully. And then now it's gotten to where like RC groups, some dedicated conversations on the builds for people to. Facebook has groups and stuff, so it's cool to see how people have helped each other out to get. Actually, when the B-17 came out, there's people that are doing some pretty impressive builds. Their paint detail's really good, and one guy cut out every single one of the windows and vacuum formed his own windows to make them clear and putting pilots in there and stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, that alone is a lot of work.
It's incredible.
Pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So I noticed you have a lot of detail on the engine.
Yeah.
And the engines for this. Did you basically do you pulled the file, you made the print, but you obviously put in extra wire and some copper in there or something else?
Yes.
To really bring out.
It's like, really thin gauge copper wiring, electrical wiring, the red stuff.
Yeah.
And then the rocker arms. Yeah, it looks really scale. The rocker arms are just carbon fiber tubes, little carbon fiber tubes.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, little 1 millimeter deals.
The cylinders themselves and the ignition ring is kind of in gold. Those are printed.
I've got to give this one a go at some point.
It's it's an undertaking. It's a lot of parts. It's an 83-inch wingspan.
Yeah.
But you can see some pictures of it in the air. It's just an impressive looking plane in the air. And it flies really well, which is just the added bonus.
So cool. So
The airfoils are scale. I looked up all the airfoils. Like, it changes from the root to the tip.
Mm-hmm.
What the airfoil shape is. So everything's real scale.
Okay. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be clapping right now if I thought it would
You
come
wouldn't
through
blow
right.
out the mic.
I don't like
That's
it.
cool.
It's not going to come out right. But no, really, it's incredible. And of course, the little bomb pod underneath. How durable are these models? I know the lightweight PLA tends to be a little bit forgiving. It seems.
Yeah, it's got some flex to it, like foam.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not going to hold up as well as a foam plane. It's going to crumble if you crash it. So there's not a lot you can do to salvage it if it has a hard crash. But even like rough landings, it's fine. I mean, I have all these planes you see on the website. I still have the original ones that I fly. So it's not like, so you fly them a couple times. And they hold up really well.
Yeah, it looked like it.
So, yeah.
Especially when you did the different scale ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So like a little bit of hanger rash isn't going to make them.
It's easy. No. Like the other day, I knocked the B-17 off the table. Luckily, there was some like boxes and stuff to kind of stop it. But, yeah, it cracked a little part of the, like a little chunk of the trailing edge of one of the wings came off, and just glue it right back on with CA. Typical like foam hanger rash.
Right.
But you're dealing with like stuff that'll, it'll crack and put a hole in the wing or something instead of a dent.
Joe, this might be a good spot to bring in some of the community comments. We've had some people ask us some questions to pass along to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can. So, fella named Apis in our Discord, Devin, he'd asked way back a week ago when we were going to do it back then, or when we announced it. He said, you consider making a super guppy? I don't know.
I saw that question, and it's funny that he asked that. Yes, I have thought about that. So look up Super Guppy. It's NASA owns the airplane.
What?
It's the ugliest plane probably still flying today. But this is funny that he asked this, because I guess I have, to answer his question, yes, I've thought about it, and I think it would be, nobody would want to build it probably, but it would be a really interesting exercise. But that plane, there's only one, maybe there's two of them still flying. But they actually use it. NASA owns it. They use it to travel ship large parts across the country. And I live in El Paso.
Plane sections.
I live in El Paso, Texas, and it's housed at El Paso International Airport.
Oh, wow.
So the fact that he brought that plane up, I think, is funny, because I see it, and I see it when it's flying around. I'm like, hey, the Guppy's flying today. It's chrome on the top, so like the sun eats off its huge noggin, and it's flying, and it's like it's impossible to miss when they're flying it out of El Paso to take parts to wherever they take.
I bet that's impressive to see take off.
Right. It looks like it has no business actually getting into the air.
Yeah, but it works. I mean, it's got a very specific job, and something kind of cool about a plane that just is only for a specific function and not to like look pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's ugly.
Efficiency isn't its key purpose.
I mean, it looks like I don't know, like an evil villain, like a brainiac evil villain.
Like Mastermind.
Yeah.
Would have this plane.
Or what's that one that Will Ferrell narrated? Or he was like the evil villain guy. He just has a huge brain, and that's not the prettiest plane. But yes, I have considered designing one just to, I don't know, people make fun of me. I think it'd be funny to see that fly in an RC version.
Well, here's what I can say. I think, which I've been sitting on the Eclipse and Model B for like a year and a half now. Slowly printing a couple pieces here and there as I get the printer working and then it quits working right, and that's an ongoing struggle. But if I ever got to where I was able to print consistently, and I got a couple planes printed that I have plans for, I'd try printing that.
Yeah.
just to do it, because why not? So, Devin, I was also curious, you have all 3D printed planes at this time, but have you considered making some sort of a skeleton or a hybrid that you would then finish off later, either by scanning with some sort of monocoat or even foam?
Yeah. I think foam, like a thin foam board as a skin, would be a really good option. Monocoat, you run into trouble with the heat melting the plastic underneath, or even if it would, I don't know how well it would stick. There's people that have done it, though. That is definitely you could. The problem with the skeleton, like, because of the size of 3D printers, there you go. Doing the ones
the bed is small.
Yeah, so you're not really saving that much time versus just building one. You're going to have a better results building it from balsa. Yeah, that's the beauty. Like, cause I like the larger, like 60-inch and bigger designs the best. And so that size of plane, it caters more to, like, let's just print the whole thing, the skin and all.
Yeah.
I would jump a question, Matt, because I'm actually curious about this concept myself. Bushhawk RC was asking, he's curious to hear about the possibility of using glow engines on 3D printed planes. I'm curious about the gasser aspect, and what modifications would you have to make as a builder or even as a designer?
I think there's a few people have done it. I'd have concerns with the vibration. A lot of people have, and printing out of this lightweight PLA makes this doable, but just simply printing the plane as is and giving a real light coat of fiberglass coating it, and you could probably put a glow engine on it just fine. I don't think there's issues of the glow of the fuel dissolving the material like it would with foam or something.
No, not with the shell.
Yeah, for sure not with the fiberglass, but even the raw material by itself, the fuel wouldn't harm it.
So I wonder if some of the concern is temperature, but you'd probably still want to use like a wooden firewall when you're doing that.
I think some of the higher temp materials, like all the motor mounts I design, even for the electric motors, I recommend printing out of a higher temperature material. Because that gets hot.
Like an ABS.
ABS or PETG is a friendly. It's very similar properties to ABS, but a lot easier to print.
Yeah,
it's safer.
Yeah. It doesn't have the vapors.
Yeah, exactly. So that material would maybe hold up okay to the heat of an engine, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, I've heard of. I haven't done the gas thing yet. I'm still. I don't want to say his name is Mike, and I feel really terrible. The gentleman that gave us the motors.
Oh my God, David Yearsley, come on now.
David Yearsley, that's him.
Ooh,
I don't know why Mike was stuck in my head. David, if you listen, I am so sorry. So I'm still sitting on a Zenoa G38, I think.
Yeah.
That I've got to find a project for at some point. Yeah. But
we need to do it this year, dude.
I don't know if we'll do this.
I mean,
anyway, but go ahead. Yeah.
So I know with the electric motors, we don't have the combustion vibrations. Is vibration really? I've heard that it's a thing, but is it really that big of a thing?
Well, especially once you get into those bigger. I mean, the Noahs also are an older engine. They're good. They're really good, reliable engines. But yeah, it's definitely vibration is an issue. So it doesn't cause any harm on like traditional balsa planes at all. I would have a little bit of a concern on a 3D printed plane.
Is the concern just layer splitting, and so the fiberglass is
maybe
reinforcing?
I mean, I wouldn't have a concern if you fiberglassed over it. Then glow or gas engine would probably work just fine.
What if you did some sort of like a spray-in rubber lining?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know if that would have enough bonding, or even just coating in. If you sand all the material down and just put a thin coat of epoxy, helps kind of bond the layers together as well.
Mm-hmm.
Probably without adding a ton of weight. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, but he does some YouTube videos. He's tested that theory and some really stiff airframes just doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's worth exploring. Sure. Now that they're coming out with smaller gas engines and stuff too.
Yeah, I noticed that's coming down the pipe. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. What would be your thought of if somebody were to let's say they took your Super Chipmunk.
Hmm.
Super Chipmunk? Yes.
Yep.
And wanted to put a gasser in it.
Yeah.
Which I know there's potential problems with trying to get it in the nose given the shape and potential motor that you may be using, but there's a lot of like the gas tank and things that would need to mount up in there.
Yeah.
Would that be just kind of figure it out as far as trying to get a gas tank and other things like the batteries and all that they need mounted in there?
It probably wouldn't be much modification. That particular design. I mean, there's already the place where the battery would go. There's room for a gas tank. There's already holes in the firewall for venting and everything. You could run the tubes through.
Okay.
The only concern, this is untested, and so I don't. You definitely would. There's room to add a little bit of weight with fiberglass, though. Like it would still fly well with that added weight. It's a pretty flexible design from that aspect.
Okay, cool. Because it is pretty sizable. It's not like a tiny.
That's a 64-inch wingspan.
Okay, so it can handle the extra weight and still fly.
A little bit. Yeah.
I guess I'll lose sight of that looking at that picture because I
think there's a picture of me holding it on the website.
There is. I just looking at the main picture of it. But yeah, once you get through and you see you standing beside it or holding it, you get a better scale of it.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think there was just one more question from the community, and then we can go on to the other things. And I know we've already kind of talked about a bit about your 3D design.
Huh.
But Spitfire 76, Richard was asking, I'd like to know more about how he goes about designing 3D printed planes. It looks more involved than designing a foam board plane and likely requires some serious CAD skills.
Yeah, that's the biggest learning curve is moving from 2D CAD to 3D CAD.
Mm-hmm.
The 3D CAD programs, or the one I use is called a parametric designer. Or you're working in 3 planes. Everything still starts in 2D. So like, let's just say I'm extruding out a wing shape. So I'll on horizontal plane, let's say. I
think I saw, because I was watching a video on designing and somebody was talking, I don't know what program they were using, but they imported the 3 view and sized it all up, and they would use a plane to draw their shape on, and then say further out, so say like a wing, they do it at the root, they do it at a wingtip, draw the plane out there, or draw a 2D plane there with a wing chip, and then tie those 2 planes together in the 3rd dimension to extrude it from one to the other.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I do touch on that in my videos. Like, you can get at least kind of a broad overview of how something comes together in CAD.
Okay.
And I do use that technique where you actually, especially on the scale designs, like the B-17, actually imported JPEGs of the design from each different viewpoint, and then line them. It takes a lot of time to line them all up perfectly. So when I rotate my model, I can see the top view of the B-17, like just 3 view basically, and then I rotate it to see the horizontal view, and both of those sketches line up perfectly. So just doing that, you start to see how the 3D shape is going to come together. Then you have to, those are just pictures. So you start modeling. Simplest way I can explain it is with a wing on the horizontal plane. You sketch an airfoil or import an airfoil. That's on a 2D plane. And then when you go back to your 3D environment, it's as simple as just being an operation. In this case, it's called extrude. And then I hit extrude and say, I want to extrude that 1,000 millimeters. And it just pops it out. Then you started with your first 3D shape right there. You got a 3D airfoil.
I know if you're changing airfoils, it's most programs they call it like a loft or something like
exactly.
that.
So, or a tapered wing.
Mm-hmm.
That's as simple as you can get. Is just a simple straight wing. Then once you start doing swept wings or tapered wings, or adding like washout towards the wingtip, then you start getting into more complicated operations.
Okay.
I could spend hours going into extreme detail on how to do it. But it's really good thing is if you are interested in trying to get into 3D CAD, and like if you've used 2D CAD before, it starts with that. And then you can get into learning 3D. So now there's options out there that are powerful enough cheap enough for any hobbyist to get into designing 3D planes like this. So I think the most popular one is called Fusion 360. Used to be free if you're a hobbyist and just using it for personal use. So I can't confirm that, but check that out. And then the program I use is called SolidWorks. They have a hobbyist version that's like $10 a month. Some of my videos, you'll see a link actually that'll give you like 20% off of that for a year or something for people that want to try it out.
Nice.
So that's all I use now is just their maker version. It's the exact same version as like their $5,000 a seat standalone engineering software.
Mm-hmm.
Just you have to have an internet connection. You can't use the files for commercial use, only for personal use.
You can't sell them. Is that part of why your stuff is free? It's because you're like, I don't.
Not really. I could still sell it because I have a relationship with SolidWorks, so they let me use makers. Their makers version is what they call it, because I would help promote it in my videos and stuff. And they were a sponsor of some of my videos.
Okay.
But before I ever had a relationship with them, I was already using SolidWorks professionally.
Okay.
So which is why I reached out to them to see if they wanted some content.
Cool.
Last question from me, and this one's from me, not from community. Sure. Let's say we could take the Super Chipmunk as an example, but say you had another plane like the Super Chipmunk that you didn't necessarily need to do all the scale detail. You just wanted to take those 3 views, put them in there, and get the plane made. So I'd say, how long would it take you? But then you've got a ton of experience. So somebody who's kind of getting their feet under them, how long do you estimate it would take somebody to build that plane? Design it to then be 3D printed.
Right. I think something like the Chipmunk it took me about 100 hours of work.
Okay.
Just in the CAD. You could do simpler designs, in 50 hours of work, something like that. But just start with something real simple,
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I would say pick one software and stick with it for a while, and learn all the operations. If you ever want to switch to a different software, as long as it's another like parametric modeler is what they call it, it's fairly easy to switch. A lot of the operations are similar names.
Similar. Yeah, they have different names, but they do the same thing.
Yeah, you do start to kind of fall in love with the process of one software versus another.
Even with Autodesk versus Bentley, it's really just they reverse the way you approach the process. Like instead of saying, "Hey, I want to draw a line," so hey, you're going to draw a line, so pick a point, pick a point, pick a point, pick a point. It's like, okay, pick a bunch of points and tell me what you want to do with them. Those are the difference between the two programs. It's like, well, which which direction do you want to come at this?
Exactly.
And while it's very backwards, depending on where you start, essentially they're doing the same thing, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So cool. Hey, quick question for you. So one of the hardest things, it seems to me, that I've heard from complaints of people attempting to 3D print their planes and having either success or failure, or like Joe and I, who've attempted it and got halfway there, and something happens with it. What are your recommendations for how to keep a 3D printing successfully, getting all the way through all the different parts and getting to the end of that print without having too many interruptions that might stop you from finishing the project? Or are there, like, do you have just like, hey, I've got these printers seem to be far more carefree, even though they're more expensive, you will save yourself time-wise. Well, what are your recommendations? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so from an actual 3D printer standpoint, like different brands, I can tell you the ones I use, but what is it about them? You could look for similar models that maybe are a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Ones I use are called Prusa MK3s.
Yep.
They have a kit, I think is like $700 for the kit, which isn't a bad idea. Like if you want to save some money, but the process of putting it together actually teaches you a lot about how 3D printers work and how to maintain them. I've done one of those, but most of mine are just the off the shelf, ready to print. They're, I think, a little over $1,000.
Okay.
It's an awesome printer, like plug and play. I rarely have to do any maintenance on them. I have 6 of them. So it's, like, it's easy for me to print out a whole airframe in like a week. Because I have 4. Exactly. And then they actually have a mini one too. So that would be my top recommendation for a 3D printed plane printer. But as long as you find one that has good reviews, there's different head styles on printers. There's a style called the Bowden style, where the actual extruder that pushes the material into the heated nozzle is stationary on the frame, and it pushes it all the way through this Bowden tube.
That's mine.
Right, which those are really inexpensive. They're great, like entry-level printers. And the positives to those is the print head's super light because there's no extruder motor on it. So you can usually, once you get it dialed in, you can print really fast. The negative is it adds a lot of variables with like back pressure, with the material having to move that far from the extruder all the way to the nozzle. So people have used those to print 3D printed planes. Like the Ender 3 is a really popular printer.
That's what we have, yeah.
But I would recommend upgrading it when they sell an upgrade to a direct drive, where the extruder motor is on the gantry with right above the nozzle, so you have much less distance to go. And that actually opens up your material options too, because then you can start printing like TPU a lot easier, foaming PLA.
A real pain.
Yeah. So that's what I would look for, a printer that's direct drive. Heated bed is necessary. You have to have a heated bed. As long as it has, there's so many printers out there now. As long as it has really good reviews on Amazon,
they probably be okay.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people in the RC 3D printing community that use Ender 3s or other Bowden style printers. It's just a lot more time to dial them in.
Okay. Cool.
I think the direct drive upgrade is $40.
Yeah, I'm seeing a couple things where it's like Crowdy Sprite Direct Drive Extruder Pro Kit for the Ender 3, $22. Amazon's got a Crowdy Direct Drive Extruder Upgrade Kit, full assembled of MK8 for $35. And I'm seeing something for $80 as doing 260 inch or 260 degrees high temperature. I don't know. I'd have to do a little more looking, but yeah, it doesn't look to be generally a bad price upgrade. I was concerned that it was going to be like $100 upgrade or something.
No, it's not like doubling the price of the printer or anything.
Okay.
Yay!
Then the other thing that, one of the biggest things that leads to print failures is not starting out great with like a nice level bed. So bed adhesion is like one of the most important things. So that's one of the nice things that Prusa has that other printers also have is automatic bed leveling. So you don't have to manually level the bed every time. So it just has a little probe before every print. It goes around and it touches 9 points and makes it'll in the software compensate for any out of level bed.
So crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got the
I still get wowed by that every time I hear about it.
Yeah. So that makes a big difference because once you get those first couple layers going down good, it's just the printer's in a groove and it's usually gonna do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I've got a BL Touch on mine,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually had to. So for the Ender, I'm running like the Marlin firmware. I had to do a custom firmware build, which I watched a video on how to, build it for my printer and enable the BL Touch and do all that. And honestly, it does the 9 point, but I kind of feel like I want to increase that resolution because when I view it on the Octoprint. So I did get the Octoprint server running on my desktop just to be able to check it out. And I see some interesting, like odd quadrants that are just like 3 are good, but 1's way out. You're like, do I have a bent bed or something? Like, so I'd like to get a higher resolution, but to do that, I got to go into my firmware, redo the firmware to say, I want you to run a 10x10, touch point kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know any of those that you still can manually alter the bed. It's really hard to dial them in so that it's repeatable every single time.
I've heard that getting stiffer springs helps with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, those are kind of the big things.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that advice and your opinion on that. So let's get into what I'll call the meat and potatoes. It's the thing that caught my eye. I mean, your X100 project caught my eye way back when you started that. And I've kind of been watching what you've been doing on and off as you go. And so I've always been interested. And then you pulled this project out. I saw this project and I geeked out so bad. So the second the Synergy came to my attention, and the Synergy is basically this little football on a flying wing. That basically, imagine a really long, thin flying wing that just basically gets folded back onto itself right near, and it basically curls back around, and almost like imagine yourself touching your shoulder, right? And then that kind of thing is happening in the plane. And that's all it's doing. And then there's just a pusher prop in the back, and off it goes. And it's this really neat way to reduce the wingspan of a plane while still, it doesn't look like it's really getting rid of the wingspan. It still has all the lift that you would have of that the full width, as well as part of the reason why they call it the Synergy is it has a synergistic aerodynamic property where the pressure from the top of the front wing actually creates additional efficiencies. Yeah. With the lift and the rear wing. And again, we were talking, if you look at the NASA box wing, you'll see what looks like an airliner where you flip over the airliner wing and have one sitting on top of the tail, kind of like your X100. But this is a little different in that they connect it not to the fuse of the tail, but they connect it back to the plane before it gets to where the pusher prop is. And it's a really neat, and the whole design concept behind it, I'm saying it's only because this is where I geeked out, was that their goal was to create a very efficient, lightweight commuter plane for 4 to 6 people for family and some friends, and just go from here to the other side of the state, pretty much. Like that's kind of the idea behind it. And it's, and then they started making it out of, CNC foam cutting, big giant sheets, and then doing a layup with, aerodynamic grade, carbon fiber and all the other, fiberglass layups and all that stuff. And look, and he really does a good job of kind of highlighting the project in his initial ideas, and then all of a sudden he dips off the part of the world, right? And it's like, oh, where did they all go? Like, he was on the scene 10 years ago, and they disappeared.
Yeah.
And then I see this little blurb, like 3 or 4 years later, because he was originally selling it as a commuter plane for the average commuter, or not a commuter, the average private
the initial goal was to make it a kit. At least the inventor's initial goal was to make it a kit. Private aviation.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm in. If and then they're like, oh, it's only $100,000 or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, I'm not in.
Exactly.
Way past my. Anyway, so obviously he went with that. So 3 years or 4 years later, I see this. He pops up in some of the news feeds he's at an expo and he's selling it as a short range commuter plane, and possibly other things. And I was like, oh, so the project isn't dead. Like, I was worried that the project, people have these ideas and they look great, and he's proven the concept. It works great. I don't know if he's proven the efficiencies. I'm assuming that he kind of has. And then he disappears again for another, 7 years. COVID happens. That certainly doesn't help anything. And all of a sudden I see this project on your website or on your YouTube channel. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I mean, the original inventor's name is John McGinnis, and you did a good job of explaining. I like your explanation of, like, look like you're touching your shoulder. That's one of the wings. So they call it a double box tail. It's like a double box wing. Yeah, but yeah, basically it's a fuselage with, it looks like two boxes attached on it with as acting as the wings. So he started that in, like 2007. Make some progress, it would fizzle out. So long story short, he's still the original inventor. He's not so much involved in the business anymore. And now they have some people that he developed relationships with that's just their strong suit now. They're better at developing business relationships and running a business. Right. So now it's starting to pick up some steam.
Well, you know how it is. Engineers are not necessarily the best businessmen. Honestly, they're not necessarily the best manager.
Sure.
Like, they will design the snot out of something.
Yeah. He's obviously a brilliant inventor and had like a brilliant aha moment with this design.
Yeah.
But without him even knowing it, held up the progress of the project because of his lack of ability to give up control to people that had different skill sets than him, or more appropriate skill sets to, like, run the business. So they're now COO or his name's Michael Duke. So he reached out to me when my Infinity Wing video started, getting a bunch of views. He was the other company representing the other company that reached out to me and said, hey, you think that design of yours, like, so he's like, congratulations on doing that. It's really cool that you came up with that solution and made that fly. But we think the design's infringing on our patent. Go check out our Synergy aircraft. It's called a double box tail. What differed him and DBT Aero from this other guy that reached out to me and said, hey, change your design or we're going to have a problem.
Right.
Michael said, just keep selling it. We don't care. What you're doing is really cool. Like, you're providing a really cool product to the people trying to get into 3D printing. I just want to introduce myself, and maybe in a couple months, like, we're looking to do some different things with RC models or UAVs, and maybe you could help us out in the future. And so I said, great. He...
This is way less aggressive.
Yeah, this is good. Thank you. Really nice guy. And then I think maybe 6 months went by, and he reached back out and said, hey, we're ready to actually, we want to do some, initially just started as like, we want to do some marketing around a scaled down version. We're getting closer on our full scale doing test flights, and we just want to make some YouTube content and have a model to take around. And so that's kind of where it started. But as we were working on the project, it's garnered a lot of attention. from different companies that are interested in using that platform, like for UAV applications.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, so now that may become like another portion of their business, which is really cool. So I'll give you like one example. Forestry industry is interested in the design, using it to actually drop like small explosives to create controlled burns in areas that are high risk for wildfires. So it's a really quick platform that can get in and out, 30-mile range, something like that. Create this controlled burn they've already got contained, get rid of or help reduce the risk for that happening in the wild.
Yeah, turning into some unmanageable fire that
exactly
raging across Canada right now, or whatever it was.
So I think they use drones now, but it's just they don't have a long range. They're not as fast.
No, not with 4 motors.
Yeah. So yeah, they just gobble up like battery power. So they could potentially build some even that have combustion engines, that would have an hour-long range and could fly 60 to 80 miles per hour. And it's a really efficient design, so they're using 30% less fuel than a typical model would. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So that was the bulk of our relationship, was like building them a 1/6 scale, doing some YouTube content around it, to kind of prove the design as a UAV application. Even that's considered a fairly small scale for UAVs. But even with that, like egg-shaped fuselage could hold a decent payload.
As it is, it was originally designed for 5 people. 6
yes.
people.
Yeah. What's up? Go ahead,
I was going to say, I was curious how much, what sort of payloads it could carry.
Yeah, at least the 3D printed one I did, you could still put like a kilogram of weight, and it would still fly fine. So it's not a ton at that size, but the bigger you go, like they'd probably build some quarter scale or third scale versus the full scale one, and have some pretty exciting possibilities.
Well, as you scale up your wing surface area, explodes so you can get that wing loading down.
Yeah. The 1/6 scale model I never took it really past half throttle, and it was flying at 60 miles per hour and just like a really smooth flying plane.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just in, having that sort of connection with it with a radio, you could tell it was a really efficient flying plane.
Yeah, which is so cool.
And you've flown the foamy version, Matt, and it's just a real stable, fun plane to fly.
It really is. It's a joy to fly. It can be acrobatic, I suppose. Like it is. Yeah. It's got a lot of ability, but at the same point, it just has this presence in the sky that's fun to watch as you fly around.
Yeah.
You can tell I put a battery in there. I could have put a lot more in there, I think. Although this was just the very, very basic, simple version. We'll put a link to JPOT1 is the name of the user on the flight test forums. He created this really, it's very simple, boxy version of this plane, and it's so easy to build, and it's so good. It flies off of a small motor, and you just have fun with it. Really. So like I said, we'll put a link, and then I'm doing a large size. I'm trying to remember if it was a 6 scale. I think it's a little bit smaller than that. But it's definitely big.
Yeah.
But at the same point, even though it's big, because it's all folded in on itself, it's really not that big. There's just no good way to kind of disassemble it. How did you manage that?
Well, so the full scale, and the one I built is 6 scale, and it's the exact representation of the full scale, even down to the airfoils and the R values, and everything's the same. And so the full scale, the elevons aren't split; they're fully articulating. Yeah. And they're designed. Everything's designed on the model to come apart. So the elevon is one piece. Main wing, the winglet is one piece. The main wing is a piece, and then kind of where the elevon meets the vertical stabilizer.
Yeah, the rudder section.
Yeah, the rudder section and the tail boom are one piece as well.
Yeah.
So each wing splits
Okay.
into 4 chunks. Well, I was able to. I could actually pack it in a pretty nice box for them.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks like it could be pretty flat at that point, with the exception of the football.
Yeah. So. Yeah, having that fully articulating elevon in it and the ability to take it apart, so it makes it nice. So the servos are actually, I got real thin wing servos, like they use them for gliders a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that has a really thin wing, and so they're actually mounted inside the wing, and it's a direct drive to the control surface. The rudder and the elevons, they don't have any push rods.
Okay.
Just direct, yeah. They're just directly mounted.
The housing sits in the wing or something like that. And
yeah, so like the elevon, the box of the servo sits inside the elevon, and just the
control horn
servo control horn is sticking out a little and able to rotate. You have to rotate it 90 degrees, and then you screw it, like you put just 2 screws on the...
Yeah, you basically, instead of screwing from the top...
Screw it into the vertical stabilizer.
Yeah, from the underside into the vertical part. And then from the outside, you have an ingenious little hole that then you can put the control horn back on the servo and screw that in from the side, and actually attach the control horn in the servo. Is what it looks like.
I have the control horn screwed into the servo already.
Okay.
It's hard to do it without showing pictures.
Otherwise, you would have it centered, right?
So you rotate the servo horn 90 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So the elevon's basically like sticking all the way, like fully articulated when you're assembling it.
Right.
Then on each side of the elevon, you have access to the hole to mount, screw in the servo arm, control horn into the vertical.
So cool.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then there's a little ball bearing on the other end so that it articulates smoothly.
Right. And then so that's basically a carbon fiber rod. Is that essentially?
Pretty good sized carbon fiber tube going through it that acts as the articulating point.
Yeah, it keeps it stiff. Because that was actually the hardest part about the foam model. If you build a foam model, put a barbecue skewer along the front edge of the top wings, because they will kind of get mushy, maybe. Because what he had done, he had basically created a solid plate across the front, and then the elevon was in the back half of the wing, but that's really small. And it's not quite enough structure in there to really do it. Now, he made another version. It's a little bit more form-fitting. It's still kind of boxy, but it's less simple. Yeah. So there's a couple versions. And like I said, we're going to send you a link to the
that's cool,
build thread so that you can kind of pull the plan.
Yeah, I've seen the build thread on flight test forums.
Cool.
So it looks cool.
Yeah, so I know I've got mine. I'm trying to remember if I still have the plans for it or if I issued the plans and I just never finished executing the build itself.
Yeah.
I can never remember. Sometimes I'll do that and I'll issue everything. Be like, well, look, if you want to build it, you go ahead. I'm doing mine. Yeah. If you want to do yours, cool. Let me know how it goes. And sometimes like I'll just keep it to myself until I have a flying model, and then I'll release the plans. I'll show that I have plans, but
so unfortunately, the 3D printed version that I helped them design, we can't release the files for that one. It's too close to the full scale. But we have been bouncing around the idea. We actually had a talk with Flight Test about maybe doing some sort of simplified foam board version that they could do as a kit, or even just like either something for FT stem or little chuck gliders, or to start and then get more complicated from there.
Right.
Just to try to start getting the design into some RC modelers' hands. The company's very interested in that.
Okay. Sounds awesome. Like I said, it probably reach out to that guy, and if I finish mine and it looks like we hope, that I hope, I'm happy to. It's one of those things I feel like more people should be able to see that there are other ways to go about this.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I would like if there's a way that. So who do I call? What, Mike? What's his name? I'm just kidding.
We can talk offline about that.
Yeah, I know, right? And just like
Oh, his address is, and his
for all of our listeners who want to pester him and saying,
Yeah.
help us get a 3D printed model that we can all build. I'm sitting there, I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get hold of you, Eric, and I want to see if there's a way, because I want a version of that that's the 3D printed version, the one that you can make smooth and really just enjoy. Because you can imagine going out to any RC field, and if you bring that model, people are going to look.
Yeah, like wow.
You know, people are going to ask you a lot of questions about it, and I think that's kind of what's exciting about this project.
Yeah, for sure. And it would garner attention for their company too. Like, yeah, if you want to learn more about the full scale one, like here's their website.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I actually met with him in person for the first time because I was handing off the plane to him.
Oh, nice.
He just it was sort of in passing, but he's like, hey, just kick around the idea of like, what could you simplify on this as a 3D printed version to make it more palatable for us to release the files.
Well, if you were to do Clark, I'm thinking if you did symmetrical foils for the top and a Clark Y on the bottom. Well, it's not, it's not accurate.
Just simplifying the airfoils would kind of be the quick answer.
Right, and you know that it would work. It just would. You'd have to probably modify the CG a hair.
Maybe, yeah.
If at all.
If at all. I can't divulge too much about how it works now.
Nope.
But it's.
Did I mention it's really cool?
Yeah, it's simple, but that's part of their whole IP.
Right. Yeah. And I know you got to be careful not to kind of touch too hard on that. So one of the things
I can tell you about, like, their business model is interesting now. So
what's that?
As you can imagine, just having the goal of making a kit for private aviators is probably not that lucrative. Like, not many people are gonna buy a kit of this. So the big thing with this design is the efficiency gains. How much it could reduce the cost of private aviation, like booking a private aircraft to fly, if you would a private jet. So that's kind of where they're going, is like, look how much cheaper we can make private aviation actually affordable for like a lot more people, like, or affordable for the middle class to just get 5 people on an aircraft and hire that plane to fly somewhere.
Well,
like
if you
would
look at
a private jet.
A lot of the groups that go out to the Bahamas, it's one of those little tiny Cessnas with total 6 seats, and they jet from Florida to Bahamas and back again.
Right.
And this is the kind of plane for that,
Right. But that's, $20,000 to make a trip, whereas, this would be quite a bit more efficient and still a pretty quick flying airplane. But they do have concept, like, even as a piston engine, it's going to be fast, but they have concepts for turbine versions.
I was going to say, what are the expected? I know they've built a couple full scale ones. What are the expected? What's the flight envelope that they're?
I'm not sure the exact cruise speed.
I'm not sure
what the cruise speed is. I don't know if they've published it yet. I guess would be. I don't know if you've looked up, if you know what like a Lancer is. It's a pretty high performance.
It is.
It's probably beautiful. Something like that.
Okay.
Which is what, 280 knots or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It cuts your commute in half if you're a Cessna.
Versus like a Cessna, yeah.
Yeah, Cessna 172 or whatever you.
So then, you get it. If they could get it into like turboprops or even turbine, then you're just increasing your performance. And then they've got battery technology is getting better. They want to explore. They have a lot of ideas, but exploring like electric flight.
Yeah, right.
So
So it's cool. It's one of those planes that excites me about as much. And this if you listen to the podcast too much, I talk about the Prandtl wing, which is one of those things. It's just like why isn't this being implemented in places?
Yeah, I don't know why more people aren't going after that type of design.
Yeah, so and honestly, our big plane, I'm honestly looking at creating extender panels that are Prandtl wing panels that extend out.
Cool.
So that way I can, because the plane is currently a bank and yank, because that's the way the combat plane is designed, right? But it would be really cool to be able to bank a little bit and start to yaw, like do a coordinated turn with it, and then fly like that. Because then you just basically, you're just kind of flying level and enjoying the flight up there. And I feel like it looks, when that works, it flies so, it feels natural. And I just, I don't know why we're not doing more of that.
That's one thing about this design and the Infinity Wing that I've noticed. They're basically, well, the Infinity Wing, I don't have a rudder on the hand launch version, but you don't need to do coordinated turns with it. It's a banking yank also, but you don't need to coordinate yaw into it. Just the way it flies, it kind of naturally does it.
Does it?
So it's interesting, yeah.
And it's same with this. Is that because of the dihedral in it? Because when you come up at a slight angle, it starts to...
I don't know. I guess, something with the box wing design. I don't know the aerodynamics behind it, but just I noticed I don't use the rudder at all in flight for coordinated turns. The nose doesn't come up when you're even in big, like high alpha banks.
Doesn't drop. Yeah, so you don't have the outside wing dropping back, adverse yaw. Like in a Cessna, you start in the turn, and the whole thing will.
Exactly.
If you're not careful, it will. It will dip out on you. And you're like,
But it's really fun just to see it do a banking, like a high angle banking turn in flight. So it's just fun to just do circles with it.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I felt the same with my little phone one. I mean, Joe was with me when we were flying it with the first or second time.
Man, that's been a while back.
It has been a while. Absolutely.
That's all the way back when I set my throttle override on the old fogey to 0. Set the throttle to full, and then turn the throttle override off. I think I had a CPAC in the fogey. Sorry. The old story, but that old fogey went from sitting there to in the air in like 0.2 seconds.
Yeah.
Just it was gone.
Yeah, talk about a stall.
But yeah, I remember you flying the Synergy, and it looked like it was flying really well for you.
Yeah, it was. So cool. Anyway, I appreciate you sharing the stories about that project.
Yeah.
I really genuinely cannot wait for you and Mr. Duke to possibly come up with a solution that the rest of the RC community can kind of get behind and try. Because I think, while it may not have the same efficiencies if you're changing the airfoils and things like that, I think it's enough to get a lot of people excited about it. It's a really unique airplane in today's world.
Yeah, I agree. I think they came up with something pretty cool and, different. So,
really cool.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for... we've talked about a lot of the stuff that we've been looking to talk to you about. Well, we're missing one last thing that we need to do with you. It's called the lightning round.
Yeah.
So we
Go for it.
That is, of course, a short round of quick questions that it's kind of a this or that thing. We expect you to give a quick answer. You can think about it for about 3 seconds, and we just
give me choices.
We'll give you choices, but look, this is your answer, so you answer them as you need. But don't think about it too hard. It's a lot of fun.
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to start with this one, Joe. Normally Joe starts that up, but sit or stand?
Stand.
Pinch or thumb?
Thumb.
For flying purposes?
Thumb.
OpenTX, Spectrum, Futaba, Yeti, Udder.
Spectrum.
Okay.
Micro, park, or giant scale?
Giant scale.
Speed or slow/glide?
Speed.
Snow, water, pavement, or tall grass?
Pavement.
World War I, Golden Age, World War II, Jet Age, Commercial, Experimental, etc.
That's a tough one. I'll go World War II.
Okay. Build, print, or fly? Print.
I kind of figured that answer. Older or newer?
Did you say?
Older or newer?
Older.
2-cell, 4-cell, 6-cell, or all the cells?
6-cell.
Have you tried anything bigger than 6?
I don't have anything bigger than 6. I don't think I've ever joined them either. Make like a 12-cell or...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I have either. I'm just curious if...
Yeah, no, I haven't.
A lot of the helicopter guys will do that. They have something that runs on a 12S.
Right.
A world.
They join them in series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they add...
Yeah. V17 runs on 2 6-cell packs. So each wing.
Parallel.
Well, I have... Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Foam, filament, or balsa?
Filament.
Axis or allies?
Allies.
Landing gear or belly land?
Landing gear.
And the last, probably most important one is creamy or chunky?
Chunky, for sure.
Does it change if fluff is involved?
Ew, no. I don't want fluff. It's like weird, crunchy, too much crunchy, creamy contrast.
Okay, congratulations. You made it to the end of the lightning round.
That
was infuriating.
Yeah, I know. You were scared, I know.
I was between Golden Age and World War II. One of my favorite planes is the GB.
Yeah.
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 And I would build one if they didn't fly so terribly.
They're not meant to fly. They're meant to just basically barely keep in the air.
Yeah.
The GB, that's the giant motor with little baby wings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a racing, yeah. And they fly awesome. At high speed, they fly great, but landing's like almost impossible.
You have to come in hot.
Yeah. And it just it's like porpoising in. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I can't even imagine. That's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Well, as I kind of worried and suspected, that we will be postponing our history segment till probably after Flight Fest. So we'll push that off for now because we've definitely, I don't know, I've enjoyed the time that we've had to speak to you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would not trade that for anything. So, but I think we've reached...
Ditto. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything else that, one, you thought we should ask? And also let our listeners know where they can find you if you like.
Oh, I liked all the questions and the fact that you asked your listeners to the Super Guppy question. Really, I thought that was funny. So yeah, appreciate him. Damien, is that what his name was?
Devin.
Devin.
Yeah.
Appreciate him asking about that. And if he ever wants to see the real one, visit in El Paso, Texas.
Paso, Texas.
And you can find my website's 3DAeroventures.com, or check out YouTube for any future content, or check out the old stuff. It's youtube.com/3DAeroventures.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be sure to include those in the show notes as Matthew says, and as Matthew Colville says, in doobly-doo.
Yeah.
In doobly-doo.
It'll be in the bottom in the doobly-doo. The show notes. So good. It's so good. You're like, I know exactly what he's talking about. It's perfect. So yeah,
Eric's got a look on his face that says he doesn't.
Oh no, I think as long as the listeners know, that's good. I mean, you've probably been saying it long enough. They're like, oh yeah, I know what that is.
Exactly.
So no, I don't. We don't really say it here a whole lot. Matthew says it periodically. So Matthew Colville is a YouTuber. He does some YouTube stuff that based on tabletop games and D&D. He did a lot of D&D stuff, but he always says, "I'll leave information in the doobly-doo," and it's the description below.
Got it. So the links will be down there.
Got it.
Yeah.
I only have time for like one nerdy hobby in my life, so I've never gotten into Dungeons and Dragons.
I wish I could figure that out. Unfortunately, I've apparently found time for all the nerdy hobbies. So
yeah. No offense to Dungeons and Dragons, but I got RC airplanes as my one nerdy thing.
That's okay.
Well, if I had 6 of those 3D printers behind me, that'd be my sole hobby too.
Yes, and 3D printing, yeah.
Exactly. So. Well, Joe, do you have any further questions for Eric?
I think that's it. Other than just, again, thank you for joining us. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks you so much.
Thanks for the invite. Really honored that you guys reached out to me.
Yeah. really cool. Go watch that video on the Synergy. Actually, go watch all of his videos. They're really well done. Honestly, when I saw what you've done, every time I'm always impressed. It's a really great, like, it seems like you focus on the story of the build, and I find that to be probably the most interesting. I mean, you go into the details, but most importantly, it's the story of like, why did I even do this? What did I get into?
Yeah.
How did it go? And then
Right.
and then check this out. You know, it's pretty cool. I really enjoy watching your videos.
Yeah, I try to end every project you take on, and like I think every builder knows this, is you learn something new, right? Where you learn like what could I have done better.
Right.
So at the end of every video, I kind of think about like what did I learn throughout this whole thing, but I take it a little deeper than just like, oh, I learned how to glue better with this type of glue. It's not something like a technical build. It's more of like, what life lesson did I learn in this? So it gets a little deep, but it's something, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool.
No, it's good. It's universally approachable. Like everybody.
Yeah, it's a little cheesy.
No, cheesy is good. All right. with that, Joe, why don't you take us out?
All right, guys. Well, as always, we thank you for tuning in and listening. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as we've enjoyed having it. Eric, I know we've said it multiple times, but thank you again for joining us. Links to his stuff will be down in the description as well as ours. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach us at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. You can reach Matthew, where you can send all your complaints at Matthew@aviationrcnoob.com, or you can reach me, Joe, at aviationrcnoob.com. Join our Discord server, and you may get a chance to interact with Eric or one of our previous guests. There you go.
Put in the subject line complaints. That way my automatic thing will forward it directly to Joe.
Okay. Fair enough. We got the Facebook group, so we still got the page up, but we've formed it as a group as well so that we can more easily interact and see when things are going on. So feel free to join in over there. If you're listening to this at Flight Fest, hopefully we haven't burned your whole day up or your whole afternoon, but if you get a chance and you see us out there, this will be Saturday, so it's kind of time's running short. Swing by and see us. We'd love to get to shake your hand.
We'll have a flag out there, so look for it.
That's right. But again, this is coming out on Saturday, so we're all packing up or getting ready to. So
we'll be flying and stuff. That's when the big noobs will go into combat.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to listen to it first thing Saturday morning.
What? Why not?
Because we're going to have too much fun flying and being in combats.
Yeah, fair enough.
We'll be like an afterthought after people start going to bed.
Yeah, like, oh man, I wish I'd seen this before I left Flight Fest. All right. Well, all right, let's get out of here. Joe, thanks for bringing this out. That was good. So I botched that whole thing. So
you crashed it so hard.
Oh, man.
I did a good job. Eric, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. All right, guys. We'll catch up next time.
On the Aviation RC Noob podcast.
Podcast.
Where, you have ideas, you have this thing, and you know how you want it to be. What in the heck?
We went through this before we even hit record.
This is my India reminder.
Oh, your burner phone, you forgot to silence it.
No, I haven't. I typically, on most nights, I have a work call out to our compatriots out in India.
Oh, gotcha.
This is their 7:00 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So usually, if I don't do that, I will completely forget about it. It's usually my busy time of night.
Gotcha.
I apologize. We'll have to cut that part out.
No problem.
No, we won't.
People don't care.
Well, I appreciate you taking your time to come out and visit us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, cool. So the way our show, have you listened to any of our shows at all? You don't.
I've listened to a few episodes, and then I listened to the latest one with Ben.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm kidding.
He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I've heard of him before. He does a lot of big builds and stuff, right?
Yeah, he's kind of he's worked on a lot of jets. He just has a love for them. And then he started to build bigger and bigger, and people kept saying, "Hey, we'll help you build these things if you'll be willing to build them."
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very cool. He built was it one